My friend took credit for every charity I touched, so I made sure charity finally touched him back. Trevor has this habit. No matter what good deed you've accomplished, he has to claim something bigger, better, more meaningful. I'm usually knee-deep in volunteer work, sorting donations at the local food bank, delivering meals to homebound seniors, or organizing community cleanup drives. So when I mention, we packed 150 care packages for homeless veterans today, Trevor immediately jumps in with his one-upper. Oh man, when I volunteered last summer, we packed over 1,000. The coordinator said it was their biggest day ever. It wasn't just harmless bragging. Trevor had this way of stealing your thunder, making your genuine efforts feel small and insignificant. Every single time I'd share a story about helping someone, he'd twist it into his personal spotlight moment. I remember telling our friend group about my afternoon at Mercy Kitchen downtown. There was this elderly gentleman, probably in his 70s, who insisted on giving me his last dinner roll because he thought I looked too skinny to be serving others. The whole table found it touching, the kind of moment that reminds you why you volunteer in the first place. Before anyone could even respond, Trevor cut right through the sentiment. That's sweet, Ava, but you should have seen what happened when I worked there. This homeless veteran broke down crying, telling me I'd given him hope again. Said I reminded him of his daughter and that meeting me changed his entire outlook on life. The story was probably fabricated, but Trevor told it with such conviction that everyone shifted their attention to him. My genuine moment became background noise to his manufactured heroism. When I organized my first winter coat drive for Lincoln Elementary, collecting over 200 coats for kids in need, Trevor's immediate response was predictable. That's fantastic. I was actually planning to start something similar, probably targeting multiple schools across the district. Mine would have been way bigger in scope. He never showed up to help sort coats. Never contributed a single donation. Never even asked how it went. But my friends started buying into his stories. Since Trevor spoke with such authority and confidence, they began treating him like some kind of charitable expert. Meanwhile, I was the one actually showing up, getting my hands dirty, learning the real challenges of non-profit work. Trevor was building his reputation from the comfort of his living room, crafting stories that made him look like a humanitarian while I did the actual labor. The more I let it slide, the bolder Trevor became. He stopped just exaggerating his own experiences and started adopting mine entirely, retelling my stories as if they'd happened to him. For months, I watched him take credit for work he'd never done, impact he'd never made, and connections he'd never formed. But I stayed quiet, telling myself it wasn't worth the drama. After all, the important thing was that people were being helped, right? Whether Trevor got the credit shouldn't matter as long as the work was getting done. I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The Riverside Community Kitchen fundraiser wasn't just another charity event for me, it was personal. My grandmother had started the program 15 years ago, cooking meals in her own kitchen and delivering them to families struggling to put food on the table. After she passed 3 years ago, a small group of us kept her legacy alive, now serving 30 families every week. It wasn't glamorous work. We'd meet every Saturday at dawn, prep meals in a cramped church kitchen, then spend hours making deliveries across town. But those 30 families depended on us, and keeping Grandma Rose's vision alive meant everything to me. The annual fundraiser was our biggest event, usually raising enough money to keep us running for 6 months. This year, we'd managed to book the community center and even got some local businesses to sponsor tables. I'd been planning it for months, designing flyers, coordinating volunteers, reaching out to potential donors. The night of the event, Trevor showed up looking like he'd stepped off a magazine cover, crisp button-down shirt, perfectly styled hair, that confident smile he wore when he knew cameras might be around. I was genuinely surprised to see him, since he'd never shown interest in Riverside Community Kitchen before. "Trevor, I can't believe you came," I said, greeting him near the entrance. "This means so much." "Wouldn't miss it, Ava. This cause is really important to me," he replied, scanning the room like he was counting potential networking opportunities. During the silent auction, I noticed Trevor positioning himself near the photographer, making sure he appeared in shots with prominent community members. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and exchanging business cards with everyone who looked remotely influential. When it came time for speeches, I kept mine brief and heartfelt. I talked about Grandma Rose's original vision, about how 30 families might not sound like much compared to larger organizations, but to those 30 families, our weekly deliveries were lifelines. I shared a story about 8-year-old Marcus, whose mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't always afford groceries. Every Saturday, he'd wait by their apartment window, watching for our delivery van. The audience was moved. Several people approached me afterward, talking about increasing their monthly donations or volunteering their time. Then Trevor asked for the microphone. "I just want to add something," he began, and my stomach immediately clenched. When I first got involved with Riverside Community Kitchen, my blood ran cold. When he first got involved, he'd literally never set foot in our kitchen. I knew we had the potential to reach so many more families. My connections in the business community could help us expand from 30 families to hundreds across the entire metro area. We could turn this into something really significant. He spoke for 10 minutes about his vision for growth, his plans for expansion, his network of contacts who could transform our small operation into a major nonprofit. He talked about Grandma Rose's original program like it was a cute but limited first step towards something much more important, something he could deliver. The audience ate it up. Trevor had that gift of making big promises sound not just possible, but inevitable. He painted a picture of food trucks, corporate partnerships, and citywide impact that made our current work seem almost quaint. After his speech, donors started approaching Trevor instead of me. A woman who'd been ready to write a significant check asked Trevor for his business card. A local restaurant owner wanted to discuss Trevor's expansion plans. Even the photographer started focusing on Trevor, asking him to pose with the check presentation. Later, as we cleaned up, one of the sponsors actually asked me, "So how long have you been working for Trevor's organization?" I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. In one evening, Trevor had managed to rewrite the entire narrative of Grandmother Rose's legacy, positioning himself as the visionary leader and me as merely a helper in his grand plan. The weeks following the fundraiser were torture. Trevor had somehow managed to get himself added to the Riverside Community Kitchen's social media accounts and started posting regularly about his work with the organization. Photos of meal prep sessions I'd organized appeared on his Instagram with captions like, "Another successful Saturday with my team," and "Grateful to be making a difference in our community." The worst part was watching people believe him. Comments poured in praising Trevor's dedication and asking how they could get involved with his charity work. Friends who'd known me for years started asking why I'd never mentioned working with Trevor's nonprofit. I tried to correct the narrative gently at first. When someone congratulated Trevor on social media, I'd comment with something like, "Great team effort today," hoping to remind people that this was collaborative work. But Trevor would respond with comments that subtly reinforced his leadership role. "Thanks. Always happy when I can get good volunteers like Ava to help out." He turned me into a volunteer in my own grandmother's organization. The breaking point came during our monthly planning meeting. We were discussing the upcoming Thanksgiving meal distribution when Trevor casually announced, "I've been talking to Channel 8 News about covering our event. They want to do a feature story on local food programs." Our event. I couldn't help but ask. Well, yeah, the Riverside program. They specifically mentioned wanting to interview the founder about the organization's growth and community impact. My hands clenched under the table. "Trevor, you didn't found Riverside Community Kitchen. My grandmother did, 15 years ago." "Right, but I mean the person who's really built it into what it is today. The expansion, the fundraising, the community partnerships, that's been my focus since getting involved." The other volunteers looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. Trevor had positioned himself so skillfully that challenging him felt like disrupting the group's harmony. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandma Rose, about the countless Saturday mornings she'd spent making sandwiches and packing care packages. She'd never done it for recognition, she just saw families in need and refused to let them go hungry. The idea of Trevor taking credit for her legacy, of him being interviewed on television as the founder of her life's work, made me physically ill. But Trevor lived for attention and recognition. He loved the idea of being seen as charitable, as a community leader, as someone making a difference. The actual work, the early mornings, the repetitive meal prep, the unglamorous food deliveries, that wasn't sustainable for someone who craved constant validation. That gave me an idea. Hurricane Isabella had just devastated the coastal town of Cedar Bay, about 4 hours south of us. The news coverage showed entire neighborhoods underwater, families losing everything they owned. It was the kind of disaster that brought out both the best in people and the worst in attention seekers. I waited until our next group hangout to make my announcement. I just got off the phone with the Cedar Bay relief coordinator, I told everyone, making sure to sound both urgent and excited. They're desperate for volunteers this weekend. It's going to be brutal, 12-hour days for 4 straight days, cleaning out flooded homes and helping families salvage what they can. I paused, watching Trevor's expression shift from casual interest to focused attention. The thing is, CNN is covering the relief efforts, and apparently the governor might visit to survey the damage. They specifically asked for experienced volunteers who can handle media interviews if needed. Trevor's eyes lit up. I could practically see him imagining himself on national television, positioned as a disaster relief expert helping hurricane victims. 4 days? Trevor asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide his excitement. That's a serious commitment. It really is, I agreed. The coordinator warned me it's going to be physically demanding. We're talking about mucking out flooded basements, carrying water-damaged furniture, clearing debris. Honestly, Trevor, given your experience with large-scale volunteer coordination, you'd be perfect for this. I watched him puff up at the compliment. Yeah, I mean, I've handled bigger operations than most people realize. Exactly. That's why I thought of you first. Plus, you're so good with people, if the media shows up, you could really represent our community well. Naomi and Jordan said they'd join too, and Blake offered to document the trip for our social media accounts. The more people who signed up, the more attractive the opportunity became for Trevor. He couldn't risk being left out of what might become a highly visible charitable mission. All right, Trevor announced, standing a little straighter. I'm in. 4 days, full commitment. Cedar Bay won't know what hit them. The group cheered, and I made sure to thank Trevor enthusiastically for stepping up. I knew I could count on you, I said, sealing the deal. Over the next few days, I laid the groundwork carefully. I created a group chat for all the volunteers, sharing logistics about meeting times, what to pack, and what to expect. I forwarded legitimate updates from the Cedar Bay Relief Coordinator about the genuine need for volunteers and the challenging nature of the work. But I also subtly emphasized the media attention angle, mentioning how news crews were looking for compelling human interest stories and how the governor's visit had attracted national coverage. Every message reinforced the idea that this would be a high-profile, potentially career-enhancing volunteer opportunity. Trevor ate it up. He started researching Cedar Bay online, probably preparing talking points for potential interviews. He bought new work boots and waterproof gear, posting photos of his disaster relief prep on Instagram. He even got a haircut, which seemed like overkill for flood cleanup but perfectly consistent with his priorities. The night before departure, I made my final preparations. I called the actual Cedar Bay Relief Coordinator to confirm that they genuinely needed volunteers and that the work would be as demanding as advertised. They assured me it would be back-breaking labor, exactly what I was hoping for. I also reached out to my contacts at the food bank where I'd been volunteering for years. Saturday was always their busiest day, and they were shorthanded due to several regular volunteers being out of town. Would I be able to help with an emergency pickup and delivery run? It was perfect timing. Friday night, I packed my bags and set my alarm, just like everyone else. But instead of heading to Cedar Bay, I had a different destination in mind. Saturday morning arrived with Trevor texting the group at 6 a.m., ready to make a difference today. Let's show Cedar Bay what real volunteers look like. At 7:30, just as the group was meeting in the parking lot to carpool south, I made my call. Trevor, I said, putting on my most stressed-out voice. I'm so sorry, but I can't make it to Cedar Bay. What? Ava, what happened? The Riverside Community Kitchen Coordinator just called in a panic. 3 of our regular delivery drivers called in sick, and we've got 30 families depending on us today. I have to cover the routes myself. There was a pause. I could practically hear Trevor calculating whether backing out would look bad in front of the others. That's terrible timing, he said. But don't worry, I'll handle the Cedar Bay situation. I'll represent both of us down there. Thank you so much, Trevor. I knew I could count on you. Please take lots of photos and document everything. I can't wait to hear about all the good work you do. Don't worry about us, Trevor replied confidently. I've got this covered. By 9 a.m., my phone was buzzing with updates from Naomi. Holy crap, Ava, her first text read. Trevor is not handling this well. I was genuinely delivering meals for Riverside Community Kitchen, I hadn't lied about that. But between stops, I eagerly read the incoming reports from Cedar Bay. Naomi's 9:15 update, we've been here 45 minutes and Trevor is already complaining about the smell. It's like he thought hurricane cleanup would be Instagram friendly. 9:47 a.m., Trevor keeps asking when the news crews are supposed to arrive. The site coordinator looked at him like he was crazy. 10:30 a.m., he's struggling with basic tasks. Jordan had to show him how to use a crowbar. Trevor. Crowbar. The photos Blake sent were even better than I'd hoped. Trevor, who'd arrived looking like a catalog model, was now sweating through his expensive moisture-wicking shirt. His carefully styled hair was plastered to his forehead, and his new work boots were caked with mud. But the real comedy began around noon. Trevor just asked if we could take a lunch break, Naomi texted. The coordinator explained that flood victims don't get lunch breaks and neither do we. Trevor's face was priceless. Blake's photo showed Trevor bent over a wheelbarrow full of waterlogged drywall, his face bright red with exertion. The caption read, Hour 4, reality setting in. By mid-afternoon, the updates painted a picture of complete culture shock. Trevor, who'd spent months talking about large-scale volunteer operations, was discovering the difference between theoretical knowledge and actual physical labor. 2:45 p.m. from Jordan, Trevor just got sprayed in the face with contaminated water from a shop vac. He's not happy. 3:20 p.m. from Blake, dude keeps checking his phone for news alerts about the governor's visit. Someone needs to tell him the governor came and left yesterday. 4:15 p.m. from Naomi, Trevor's hands are covered in blisters. Real ones. He's trying to work through it, but you can tell he's miserable. The final photo of day 1 showed the entire volunteer group. Exhausted but smiling, covered in mud and debris. Everyone except Trevor, who sat apart from the group, staring at his phone with a defeated expression. That evening, while my friends shared stories and bonded over their shared suffering, Trevor posted a single Instagram story, day 1 complete. Harder than expected. Back at it tomorrow. No bragging. No self-congratulations. No mentions of how his experience compared to everyone else's. For the first time in years, Trevor had nothing to one-up anyone with. But I knew the real test was still coming. Day 2 would determine whether Trevor was capable of genuine growth or if he just learned to keep his mouth shut when he was struggling. Sunday's updates suggested the answer. Sunday brought a new level of suffering that even I hadn't anticipated. Hurricane Isabella had left Cedar Bay with more than just surface-level damage. There were flooded basements, contaminated water systems, and structural damage that required serious physical strength to address. Naomi's morning text set the tone. Trevor showed up 20 minutes late and is already asking if today will be shorter than yesterday. The site coordinator told him they work until the work is done. By 10 a.m., the reports were getting more detailed and more painful to read. Trevor just threw up, Jordan texted. The combination of physical exertion and the smell from flooded sewage lines was too much. He's sitting in the van trying to recover. Blake sent a photo of Trevor hunched over, holding his stomach, while everyone else continued hauling debris. The caption was simply, "Not built for this." The afternoon brought the complete collapse I'd been orchestrating for months. 1:30 p.m. from Naomi, Trevor just started crying. Actually crying. A homeowner thanked us for helping save her photo albums, and Trevor broke down completely. I think reality just hit him. 2:45 p.m. from Blake, he keeps saying he didn't know it would be like this. Like, what did he think disaster relief looked like? 3:15 p.m. from Jordan, Trevor asked if he could leave early. When the coordinator said no, he just sat down and put his head in his hands. But the most telling update came at 4:30 p.m. from Naomi. Something changed. Trevor stopped complaining and just started working. Like, really working. He's not talking to anyone, just moving debris and helping where he can. It's weird. Monday was the final day, and I expected Trevor to quit. Instead, something unexpected happened. The morning updates were different in tone. 8:30 a.m. from Blake, Trevor was here before any of us. Already working when we arrived. Didn't say a word. 11:15 a.m. from Jordan, he's working harder than anyone else now. Like he's trying to make up for something. 1:20 p.m. from Naomi, Trevor just spent his lunch break helping an elderly man sort through water-damaged family photos. No cameras, no audience. Just helping. By the time the group returned Monday evening, I realized my plan had worked better than I'd intended. I hadn't just exposed Trevor's fake expertise, I'd accidentally forced him to confront the reality of genuine service. The group met at Murphy's bar to decompress, and I made sure to be there, curious to see how Trevor would handle the aftermath of his first real volunteer experience. He walked in 2 hours after everyone else, wearing a faded hoodie instead of his usual attention-grabbing outfit. His hands were still bandaged from blisters, and he moved like every muscle in his body hurt. When he saw me, Trevor walked directly to my table. "You set me up," he said quietly, but not angrily. I blinked, acting confused. "Set you up? How?" The media coverage, the governor's visit, the easy volunteer opportunity, none of that was real, was it? The table went quiet. Our friends looked between us, sensing tension but not understanding the full context. "Trevor," I said carefully, "I told everyone it was 4 days of flood cleanup." "That's exactly what it was." Naomi jumped in. "We all heard the same description, Trevor. And honestly, you should be proud. You worked really hard, especially those last 2 days." Blake nodded. "The photos I got show real impact. You helped a lot of families." But Trevor shook his head, looking directly at me. "I lost my job because of this weekend." The table froze. This wasn't the outcome I'd intended. "What do you mean?" Jordan asked. "I was supposed to have my quarterly performance review on Monday. I called in sick to go to Cedar Bay, but my manager saw Blake's social media posts of me volunteering. Apparently, lying about being sick to do charity work is still lying about being sick." The silence at Murphy's bar stretched uncomfortably long. I felt a knot forming in my stomach that had nothing to do with the beer I'd barely touched. "Trevor," I started, but he held up his bandaged hand. "Let me finish," he said, his voice steady but tired. "I know what I did. For months, I've been taking credit for work I never did, claiming experiences I never had, making myself look good while people like you did the real work." Our friends exchanged glances. This was the first time anyone had directly addressed Trevor's habit of credit stealing. "The thing is," Trevor continued, "I thought I knew what volunteering was. I thought it was about looking good, making connections, maybe getting some recognition. Cedar Bay taught me I didn't know anything." He pulled out his phone and showed us a photo Blake had taken without his knowledge. Trevor kneeling in contaminated water, carefully helping an elderly woman sort through decades of family photos that might be salvageable. This woman, Mrs. Patterson, lost everything in the flood. Her husband's military medals, her children's baby photos, 50 years of memories. And when I helped her find one photo that wasn't too damaged, a picture of her wedding day, she hugged me and started crying. Trevor's voice cracked slightly. She said it was the only thing she had left of her life before the storm. And I realized I'd never actually helped anyone before. Not really. All my stories, all my bragging, it was just talk. Naomi reached across the table and squeezed his arm. "Trevor, you helped a lot of people this weekend. That's what matters now." "But I also lost my job," he said, looking at me. "And I think Ava knew that might happen." All eyes turned to me. I felt exposed, caught between defending my actions and acknowledging the unintended consequences. "I didn't know about your performance review," I said honestly. I was tired of watching you take credit for work you'd never done. Especially with Riverside Community Kitchen. That was my grandmother's legacy." "Your grandmother's?" Blake asked. "I thought Trevor started that program." The truth finally came out. I explained how Grandma Rose had begun cooking meals in her own kitchen 15 years ago, how I'd taken over after she passed, how Trevor had gradually inserted himself into the narrative until people believed he was the founder. "I never said I founded it," Trevor protested, but without his usual conviction. "You said when I first started with Riverside Community Kitchen at the fundraiser," I reminded him. "You let people believe you were the driving force behind everything." Trevor was quiet for a long moment. "You're right," he finally said. "I did. And I'm sorry." The apology surprised everyone, including me. "I don't know why I did it," he continued. "Maybe because I felt like my life wasn't meaningful enough on its own. You were always helping people, making a difference, and I wanted to feel like I was doing something important too. But instead of actually doing the work, I just stole your work. Jordan leaned forward. So what happens now? With your job, I mean. Trevor shrugged. I'll figure it out. Maybe this is a chance to actually do something real instead of just talking about it. Mrs. Patterson asked if I'd help her rebuild her garden when the cleanup is finished. No cameras, no recognition, just helping a neighbor. That's beautiful, Trevor, Naomi said. The ironic thing, Trevor added, looking at me with something like respect, is that Cedar Bay was the hardest thing I've ever done, and also the most rewarding. You probably thought you were punishing me, but you actually gave me something I didn't know I was missing. Over the following months, Trevor proved he was serious about change. He started showing up for regular Riverside community kitchen shifts, real ones, not just photo opportunities. He worked without fanfare, learned from experienced volunteers, and gradually earned back some trust from our friend group. He also found a new job, one that paid less but gave him flexibility to volunteer regularly. And true to his word, he spent weekends helping Mrs. Patterson rebuild her storm-damaged garden. The most surprising change was how he talked about his volunteer work, or rather, how he stopped talking about it. The constant one-upping disappeared. When others shared stories about helping in their communities, Trevor listened instead of competing. 6 months later, at Riverside Community Kitchen's spring fundraiser, I gave a speech about Grandma Rose's legacy and the importance of quiet service. Afterward, Trevor approached me. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For showing me the difference between doing good and looking good. Looking back, I'm not proud of the deception that sent Trevor to Cedar Bay under false pretenses. But I can't deny that it worked in ways I never intended. Sometimes people need to be pushed out of their comfort zones to discover who they really are underneath all their pretense. Trevor learned that real charity isn't about recognition or bragging rights, it's about showing up, doing hard work, and helping people without expecting anything in return. And maybe, in a twisted way, that makes my little revenge plot the most charitable thing I ever did.